answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Welcome back, Tokers. Time for a little radical ranting. Before I do, a couple quick updates on the Attorney General's race in California. Kamala Harris has widened her lead over Steve Cooley. It was 45.9% to 45.7%. It's now 46% to 45.6%. She's up by 25,000 votes now, so it's looking even better that Kamala Harris will be the next Attorney General of the state of California. Also, wanted to give a shout out. Stereotype wanted me to remind people that today is the National Call-In Day for the National Criminal Justice Commission Act. That's the Senator Webb bill, Senator Webb from Virginia, the National Criminal Justice Commission Act, which is just kind of a backhanded way of getting at the drug war without calling it the drug war. It's about looking at our prison sentencing and how we need to overhaul our justice system, and you can't really look at that without looking at the drug war. So for more information on that, check out stopthedrugwar.org. They've got information for the National Call-In Day, which is today, to support Senator Webb's National Criminal Justice Commission Act. All right, let me get to the radical rant here, first of all. Our executive director, Alan St. Pierre, put up an article on hightimes.com about Roger Christie and the THC ministry and the fight for the religious use of cannabis. And one of my regular readers on the Stash blog lambasted that article by Alan, saying it was an attack on the church and the leader. So I got to fill in on this one, my own feelings. First of all, full disclosure for anyone who cares, I am an out and proud atheist. But I was raised in a Mormon background, and my entire family are born-again type Christians. So some people think maybe as an atheist that means I shouldn't comment on religious matters. I kind of think it makes me the best neutral observer possible because I don't favor any one religion over any other. And besides, my atheism isn't like real atheism. We could have a long discussion about it. It's more like Jeffersonian deism, but that's for another time. So anyway, let me say, first of all, I think all adults have a natural right to use cannabis, and for that matter, any other plants coming out of the ground, so long as they're not hurting anyone else. So sure, religion can be your reason for why you want to use cannabis, or your health care could be your reason for why you want to use cannabis, or maybe a Dave Matthews concert. I don't care. If you're an adult, you have the right to use cannabis. Now, second of all, I completely believe that our federal constitution protects a religious right to use cannabis. I think that the First Amendment right to freedom of religion should include people using cannabis in religious sense. I completely agree with that. So if the argument is about whether I support religious cannabis use, don't go there, because I do. I completely support religious cannabis use. However, if you want to try to get away with smoking marijuana by using a religious use defense in a United States court of law, you're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. No court in the United States is going to recognize a religion's right to use cannabis. Now, they have a reasoning behind this, and that is the government does have to recognize your First Amendment religious rights, unless doing so would put an undue burden on the government's enforcement of other laws. For example, suppose you belong to a religion that mandated the sacrifice of a virgin on the equinox. Well, obviously, you can't express that religious right because it would put an undue burden on the federal government's duty to protect the citizens from homicide, right? And that's an extreme example, but you get my point. So long as the government has the right to enforce laws, they can enforce those laws if it doesn't put an undue burden on your expression of religion or an undue burden on the government to prevent the breaking of laws. And the courts have affirmed so far that the Controlled Substances Act and its classification of cannabis in Schedule 1 gives them all the right they need to stop you from expressing your religious right to use cannabis. Now, at this point, this is where people usually bring up the fact that, wait a minute, There's all sorts of religions that get to use Schedule I drugs. There's those Brazilians that get to use the ayahuasca, the very potent hallucinogen, in their religious ceremonies. There's the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993 that President Clinton signed that said that the government has to recognize religious rights and is used for that ayahuasca case. Or what about the Southwestern Indians and the people in Utah and Arizona and New Mexico that have the religious right to use peyote? That's a Schedule I substance, so why not cannabis? Well, here's why. Functionally, the courts know the minute they declare a religious right to use cannabis, there will suddenly be 26 million very religious people in the United States, and the government would have no way of stopping the non-religious people from using the cannabis. Basically, Rastafarians, Coptic Christians, THC ministry all suffers from the fact that their sacrament is too damn popular. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I'm not saying it's right. I'm telling you the way it is. Now, the other reasons why is that in those other cases with ayahuasca and peyote, the courts could kind of carve out an exception for them because it doesn't put an undue burden on the courts to enforce the other laws. For one, those churches go back centuries and have, generations worth of documented use, whereas most of these cannabis religions like THC ministry existed only in the 20th century. Okay, I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is the way they examine things. The people outside the churches that use ayahuasca or peyote is very, very, very small. So, if you legalize it for the Indians to use, it's not going to lead to a mass outbreak of everyone using it, because very few people use it. It's also very easy to identify the sincere adherents to those faiths. They belong to an Indian tribe. They share the same culture, for example. Most of these religious ministries like THC are comprised of people from all sorts of places and all sorts of backgrounds and all sorts of beliefs. And letting the tiny few people use peyote or ayahuasca is not going to be a problem for the government. Those are not the kind of drugs that are very popular or that people use often. Cannabis is. That's something people use quite a bit. It's the third most popular drug. They know if they carve out a religious exemption that everyone will suddenly be religious. And again, I'm not saying it's right. I think under the First Amendment, the courts are making the wrong. I think that the popularity of the drug should not matter. But I'm not the Supreme Court. I'm not the courts. My job as working for NORML as an advocate for people that are cannabis consumers is to tell them the truth. And the truth is, if you try to claim a religious exemption in the United States for cannabis use, you're going to get plenty of time behind bars to study the Bible. You are going to jail if you try that. Now, the other problem that I have, beyond just that, is that Roger Christie and the THC ministry sell what is called a sanctuary kit, and this is directly from their website. $250 donation for a sanctuary kit includes plaques, ID cards, rule book, a manual to educate and empower new cannabis sacrament ministers, sacramental plant tags, and religion guide, and more. The kit includes a letter of good standing, which is a key document to acquire state permission to legally marry people as a cannabis sacrament minister. The THC ministry cannabis and religion guide is over 130 pages of research, case law, and articles and interviews concerning cannabis and religion. Included in the kit are real motions to dismiss marijuana charges written by lawyers and used successfully by members of our ministry. In other words, Roger Christie is selling to naive cannabis consumers for $250 a kit that promises sanctuary from marijuana charges. Now, I know some people claim this has worked for some people in the past, and if it has, if having a sanctuary kit has gotten you out of charges, great, good for you. But unless it works guaranteed for everyone, you cannot claim your $250 kit is going to provide them sanctuary from a jail cell. That's the problem I have with it. And the other problem I have with it is they've got donations coming in and marijuana going out, right? It's not like people go to Catholic church for how much wine they can get at the from the priest, right? And they're not paying per shot of wine, right? But that's what's happening at THC ministry. People are paying per eighth or whatever. It's just marijuana dealing. Let's be honest about it. Oh, I'm going to get some letters and calls about this one. You want to talk about it? Join me in hour 2. Phone number's 971-533-7111.
This is NORML Show Live, the voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Take it on one more time. Take a seat, you plenty
For Cannabis Carrie and Ganja John, who was out today, get well, Ganja John. I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.